Welcome to our video presentations for people living with fibromyalgia. Today we're talking about managing flare-ups. You will no doubt have experienced time when your pain and fatigue have got worse and you're unable to do the normal things you would do. This is called a flare-up, which means a temporary increase in your unpleasant symptoms. We hope that by learning to manage your pain and fatigue more effectively, using the principles that we talked about in other sessions, you will experience less flare-ups. But we also know that most people with fibromyalgia will experience a flare-up from time to time. This may be due to overdoing it or from life throwing them a curveball that raises their stress levels. Unfortunately, it's not always possible to avoid flare-ups, so it's good to have a plan of how you will handle it if it happens. So what's the best way to handle these flare-ups? Well, obviously avoiding flare-ups is the best plan of all, but don't panic if you do. Remember that flare-ups of your pain are most likely to be related to your nervous system overprotecting you rather than any actual damage to your body. And secondly, every flare-up has a flare down. So have a flare-up plan ready. Often when a flare-up occurs, it can be really hard to think clearly and make decisions. It can be difficult to know what to do for the best. If you have a flare-up plan ready to use, it can enable you to manage any flare-ups more effectively, reducing their length and their intensity. So here are some ideas that you might find helpful when considering a flare-up plan. So first of all, reduce your sitting, standing and walking levels. Whatever your normal limit is for how long you can do these things, you'll need to reduce it. You can gradually increase it again as your flare-up subsides. Review your pacing. Have another look at what you're doing and increase your rest breaks. Review the managing activities video or the section in the workbook to remind you what to consider and gain some fresh ideas. Prioritise what needs to be done. You can't do so much, so prioritise what is really important for now. And continue if possible to stretch and do gentle exercise, but obviously reduce the amount. It's important to keep moving, but reduce the exercise you normally do to comfortable levels. You can gradually build this back up again once the flare-up improves. And increase your relaxation. If you normally use relaxation, then increase it. And if you don't use it, then it might be worth having another look at it. See the section on stress in the workbook or watch the video and see what might help you. And then use what helps. So you may have a range of things that help you, like heat packs, TENS machines, having a bath or something else. So during a flare-up, use those things more often. And then take any flare-up medication you have been prescribed. So you might have been prescribed medication to help you when your pain is worse. So you might want to use this while you are suffering more with pain. But try and reduce it again once the pain starts to ease, because otherwise it won't be useful for those times when you have a flare-up again in the future. And accept more help. It can be hard to accept help that is offered and even harder to ask for help. But when you're having a flare-up, this can be part of your plan. Once you start to pick up again, you can reduce the amount of help that you need from others. And it may be helpful to keep a list of people you can contact for support when you're having a flare-up. So be practical. It's more difficult to do everyday activities when you're having a flare-up. So think about how you can make them easier during this period and include these ideas in your flare-up plan. For example, do your shopping online or wear clothes that are easy to put on and more comfortable to wear. Communicate with others about how they can help. Often the people around you will want to support you during a flare-up but don't necessarily know how they can help. Tell them how they can support you. This may include practical as well as emotional support. By clearly communicating your needs, those around you are more likely to provide support you find useful. And sharing your flare-up plan with others can also help them understand the strategies you plan to use during this difficult period and the type of support you need. Manage your mood. Sometimes people will notice the mood will lower when they're having a flare-up, which is perfectly understandable. So use the strategies you find helpful to manage your mood. See the chapter on low mood in the workbook or watch the video. if you need a reminder of these helpful strategies. If you are unable to do the activities that usually boost your mood, consider alternative activities that you could do during a flare-up, which are physically and mentally less demanding. For example, sorting through old photos, listening to a podcast, or phoning an old friend. Create a list of activities you can do during flare-ups. And set small, realistic goals. As you are going to be more limited, your goals need to reflect what you can do at the moment. Set small, realistic goals so that you feel you're making progress. If you have larger goals you're working towards, you can get back on track once the flare-up is reducing. And keep a record of what helped so you can learn from it. So often it's possible to identify what caused the flare-up, and it's useful to learn from this. Sometimes it's useful to talk to the people around you, as they often notice what you've been doing that may have caused the flare-up. If there are things that really help you when you have your flare-up, keep a note of this for future reference. And finally, plan a reward for your flare down. It can be really hard to stay positive when you're going through a flare-up, so planning something nice to do for when your flare-up improves can help. This can be very simple, but it will feel very rewarding when you manage to do it. So now it's over to you to make your own flare-up plan. Think about what would help you. You can use the plan in the workbook to help you with this. And keep a record and keep it somewhere safe so that you can refer to it when you need to.